First, we need to go over the key language. So I have a couple questions and answers from a basic introduction conversation. The first one, ¿Cómo estás?, means how are you? And for now, we're going to give the nice polite answer. We're going to say, estoy bien, gracias. Just like you would say in English, I'm fine, thank you. And then later on, when you feel comfortable, you'll be able to change out this word that's in pink, bien, and you can be more specific. You can say, I'm great, I'm okay, I'm sick. But right now, we're going to stick to the polite answer just for practice. Then we have ¿Cómo te llamas? Remember that the double L is going to have a Y sound in Spanish, so that's pronounced llamas. And that's asking, what do you call yourself? Or as it's translated, what's your name? So my answer would be, me llamo Sarah. And you would change out Sarah for your own name. Now, there's always more than one way to say the same thing. So you might hear other people say, soy Sarah, or mi nombre es Sarah. And that's absolutely fine. There's always more than one way. They're all grammatically correct. There's not one that's more right than the others. As long as you're expressing the idea that you want to express, then you're fine. Next, we have ¿De donde eres? Where are you from? This can be answered a couple of different ways at the city, the state, the country level. I'm giving you the example here of soy de los Estados Unidos. I'm from the United States. But keep in mind that you could also say, soy de Pennsylvania, I'm from Pennsylvania, or soy de Philadelphia, I'm from Philadelphia. ¿En qué trabajas? Which is literally asking, in what do you work? It's a way that you can ask in Spanish about somebody's profession. And our example is, soy estudiante, I'm a student. You'll notice here that in the Spanish version, you don't put an A between the profession. You're not going to put A in front of doctor, student, nurse, teacher. You're just going to say, I am student. And the last one, ¿Cuántos años tienes? How old are you? The example is, tengo 15 años. People will ask at this point about, should I say yo soy or should I say soy? I've heard it this way, or I've heard it that way. When do I use yo and when do I leave it out? For Spanish, since you're going to conjugate the verbs differently for every single subject, it's going to have a unique form of the verb. That I know soy can only be used for I. It's already telling me I, and it's telling me am. It's telling me the subject and the verb. So I think it's better if you get used to relying on the verb and looking at the verb now from the beginning to tell you who the person is doing, who the subject is. Because if you're in a Spanish-speaking country, if you're speaking with native speakers, most of the time you will not hear the pronouns in the present tense. The other thing that I want to point out is that when you talk about age, we actually are going to use the verb tener, to have. You don't say, I am 30 years old. You're going to say, I have 30 years. The verb ser, to be, this is the number one verb in the language. So we can express a lot of things with this verb. Of course, being a very common verb, it's also irregular. So these different conjugations, yo soy, which means I am, to eres, you are, él es, he is, ella es, she is, usted, which is a formal version of you, nosotros somos, we are, and ellos son, they are. These have to be memorized. But it's worth it to memorize this verb because you're going to be using it so often, especially at the beginning, that you should be able to pick it up fairly quickly. And if you think about it in English, the verb to be is also irregular. We have am, is, and are. So it's kind of similar in that way. Then tener. Tener is still irregular, not as much as ser. It does have a little bit of a pattern to it. But in the yo form, it's going to be yo tengo, I have. Tú tienes, you have. Él, ella, or usted tiene, which would be he or she has, or you in a formal way, have. Nosotros tenemos, we have. Ellos tienen, they have. Now we have a reading comprehension. We're going to go ahead and read through the information here. This is all information with the exception of the greeting that we've seen earlier. So if you need to go back and to refresh, you're welcome to do that. And I've added 3 different greetings. Buenos días, which is good morning. Buenas tardes, which is good afternoon. And buenas noches, which is good evening or good night. The idea is that you read through this information and you're going to match, not right now, but when you're in your interactive presentation, you're going to match the people to the different pictures. Our family members, we're going to use a very simple sentence structure. This is not the only way you can do this, remember, but I chose to use this one, mi hermano es Thomas, because it's very similar to English. It tends to be less overwhelming for us when we're first beginning. By swapping out the vocabulary word for a different family member and the name, you can go ahead and introduce your family in a very simple, straightforward way. But it's something we're going to be able to build off of in future lessons. So here you're going to have an activity. Here are additional vocabulary words for reference. These are for you to practice, especially when you go to do your writing and your speaking. You can use as many of these as you want. Questions that we saw earlier and the vocabulary with the family. You can see here, hola, me llamo Sarah. I have an arrow pointing to the people. Soy de Philadelphia. Soy maestra. Tengo 28 años. Mi esposo es Charlie. You can see him in the picture. Mi hija es Sofía. And there she is. The pronunciation of hija can be a little tricky, or hijo if it's a son. You have a different vowel sound. And then the J takes on the H sound. So it comes out sounding like hija. Congratulations on finishing your first Spanish lesson. If you feel overwhelmed, that's normal. It is a lot to take in during the first lesson, but we have to start from somewhere. So remember, it's very important that right now you've only been presented with the material. It's very important for you to go back to do the practice activities and to shift that responsibility over to yourself as a learner so that when you're ready, you can complete the objective by yourself before moving on to another lesson.